Hey guys, welcome back to the Tech City live stream. Today's live stream is the usual tech live stream we have every Wednesday at about 6:30 or 7 o'clock. A little later today as we are kind of busy here in the tech department. This is going to start at about 7:30, 7:20 here. Um, just going to let the chat or any viewers, anyone that's joining, just pop in real quick before we get started. Um, but I hope everyone's day is going good. Hope your guns are working good and blessed. No issues. All right, let's set up the live chat. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna hop in, kind of get started. But if you guys are just joining or rewinding for whatever reason, we're gonna be going over the um, topic of upgrading an AEG, as we do get a lot of AEGs is pretty much bread and butter. That is what a lot of airsoft guns operate off of as a system. Obviously, the second most popular being either gas or HPA. And then I know spring powered is another option as well. But AEGs seem to be the bread and butter. We see a lot of AEGs on a daily basis, different brands, but they all function alike in functionality. I mean, you got a power source and a motor that spins along with some gears and a drivetrain that operates your airsoft replica. But today I've just got a couple parts kind of laid out to the side here to kind of go over like a general upgrading pathing or route for a lot of guys that maybe you're new to the game, right? Or you're new to AGs, you really don't know what you should be spending your money on and what you shouldn't be spending your money on. So I've just got a couple variety, different options here that you guys can kind of see. And we're just going to kind of go over a general route that you want to take when upgrading a out-of-the-box AEG. So here we've got, like I said, a full variety of products. Got a couple different motors. I've got some SHS and Rocket branded gears. Got some bushings here. These are SHS Meteorite bushings. I actually quite like these. Obviously, there is FLT 8mm bushings as well, which I do not have in frame and in inventory at the moment. But these are kind of clones of those. Got a Lonex cylinder set and some Umbrella Armory bearings. But all right, so let's jump right into it. Basically, with all these parts, right, you're a first time or a new player, or maybe even an experienced player, and it's your first time going about getting into an AEG. You're gonna be lost, right? The first thing, obviously, that I'm gonna recommend generally for most out of the box AEGs is going to be some sort of FMR piston. Now, what an FMR piston is, generally, if I can get this one to show up in the box correctly, this will have a full metal rack, as you can see, on the teeth. That is essentially what is, your gears are pulling this back, and this is essentially, what shoots your gun. The reason I recommend these off the rip, this is a $20 upgrade, right? And it will save you lots of times and headaches in the long run, right? If you don't have a FMR full metal rack piston, you're generally going to have some sort of plastic tooth piston. I know guns like KWA come with a plastic tooth rack on their piston. Crytek, even as a high-end brand, they come with a half metal rack piston, which generally is not too terrible, but for the longevity and durability of any given airsoft electric powered gun, like I said, upgrading to a full metal rack, like this is a Slong airsoft, or SHS is the more common one. Full metal rack will do you a lot of good, along with maybe a good shim job. There's really no need to like break the bank off the rip and like start getting high-speed gears, high-speed motor, right? If you're more of a casual player, right, you play maybe 2 weekends a month, maybe one weekend every couple months, you don't need to be dropping your money on, like I said, high-speed motor, high-speed gears, things like that. The best upgrade you can really do is a barrel, a bucking, right, of your choice, and then a FMR piston. That will definitely help out the longevity of your airsoft gun. The next step up from that, obviously, would be either compression as a choice or a MOSFET. Obviously, there's a variety on the market: Gate Titan, Perun, Leviathan, but that would be my second upgrade, so to speak. I'd either take care of my electrical or I'd take care of my compression. Here I have a Lonex compression set. Pretty simple upgrade. It's got a cylinder head, a piston head. This is the mushroom style, and then a cylinder, right, along with the muzzle. And this will work kind of all together, and you just get one of your favorite pistons to go along with it, and there you have a pretty strong upgrade path for longevity on your airsoft gun. Now, I know a lot of guys talk about the debate between bearings and bushings, right? So we're going to quell this and just kind of go off of what I've seen in my experience, right? Bushings are always going to be more reliable. So if you want to never open your gun, you never want to have an issue blowing or popping a bearing, you're going to go bushings, right? Generally, bushings work just fine for me. If you're really trying to push like something really high speed, high rate of fire maybe, for a specific event, bearings will definitely help, but necessarily using all bearings on your gearbox for a high-speed gun is not the best move, right? Because reliability is a thing. You're putting your spur and your sector gear under a lot of load. So bearings generally I save for a kind of efficiency build. Generally a slower build. If I'm doing something like a high-speed gear set with a 25K motor or 22K motor, I'd go bearings, right? Just cause. But I know some people will like to mix. They'll do a set of bushings. Sorry, they'll do bushings for every gear except the bevel gear. The bevel gear is what actually contacts that little gear on your motor. That's where pretty much all the power comes from. So I know people will do bearings on their bevel to kind of mix and match, or vice versa. So you can definitely mix and match. These are kind of my favorite bearings right now. These are Umbrella Armory EMG 8mm J cage bearings. By the way, all these upgrades we're discussing will work for a version 2 or a version 3, which is an AK. It's the same concept. These are EMG Umbrella 8mm J cage bearings. These are not the Umbrella bearings that everyone kind of gets hyped about. These super expensive like J cage ones that hold up like under like 60 rounds a second. These are from Evike. We sell these individually. From what I can pick apart, these are generically just Crytek bearings. So Crytek bearings, in my opinion and experience, are not terribly bad. Like I said, you just don't really want to be using this like on a build that's like 45, 50 rounds a second. I wouldn't use these on a build like that and expect it to like last long. Bearings versus bushings, like I said. Bushings, there's nothing to break. There's no ball bearings. Like it's one solid steel piece. As long as you get like good ones like these meteorites or the FLTs, you'll be just fine. But with everything we've covered so far, like I said, first upgrades you want to do is a full metal rack piston, and then you want to do either your compression or a Gate Titan or some sort of aftermarket MOSFET after. Those are the essential upgrades I see that, you know, like the most common breakage points, like people with plastic tooth pistons, I see those break all the time. Usually if we're doing service on your gun for an unrelated reason, like let's say you come in and you guys get a downgrade, usually I will sell you one of these if you don't have them already. Like I said, it's just a longevity thing. It's a pretty important part of your gearbox, and having that metal would kind of help, right? And then doing bearings and bushings, right, for aftermarket gears. Now that will lead into the gears, right? With the gears, generally, I'm going to say most of the time, you're not going to really need a gear set. These are 12 to 1s from 2 different brands. They make a bunch of different gear ratios. If you guys are curious about ratios and how gearing kind of works in airsoft, there's plenty of YouTube videos out there that do a much better job of comparing. I just don't have the allotted amount of time to actually throw these in a gun and kind of physically show you guys the difference between like what these gear sets are, why you would want one over the other. Generically, most airsoft guns out of the box, out of the factory, are going to come with a 18 to 1 ratio, right? That generally is more than enough for the casual player, right? If you're not playing any full auto games, anything crazy where you don't need more than 30 rounds a second, 18 to 1's stock ratio gears will be just fine for you. The more important, I guess, part of the gearing is having them shimmed properly to whatever gearbox you have. Generically, a cause of like motor heat and wear and tear on guns that I see up in the tech department here at Tech City is a result of poor shimming, right? Either shimming that's too tight or shimming that's too loose, right? And shimming will be a whole nother separate YouTube video for the channel. I probably anticipate getting that video together for you guys sometime this week. But shimming is a really big part with gearing. The 2 most popular brand of gears, I'm going to actually go ahead and open these. These are my favorite. These are Rocket Airsoft 12 to 1s, right? CNC steel gears. What these will do is, essentially, I mentioned most stock airsoft guns come 18 to 1, right? You're going to want to pair a motor of some sort with your gears. Generally, people think about upgrading trigger response and rate of fire. Their first thought is the motor. That is generally correct. With gears, you can get a little bit more out of this motor, right? A 22K on 18 to 1s, you're really not going to see like crazy increase in like rate of fire, right? 22K is going to give you pretty good trigger response, in my opinion, and experience with 18 to 1s. Granted that you have them installed and properly shimmed, this will do just fine with like 18 to 1 gears. Now, if you wanted more out of it, right? If you wanted more rate of fire, maybe way more trigger response, I'm sorry, you'd pick yourself up like 12 to 1s, right? High torque motor with high speed gears is kind of a staple, right? You're going to get around 25, maybe 27-ish rate of fire with 12 or 13 to 1s, which is pretty good, right? That's pushing the auto limit at most fields, Battle Labs, N1, Tac City, HSP. The limit is 30 rounds a second. So this and gears, along with the previous upgrades I mentioned, with a aftermarket MOSFET unit or not, will get you around 24, 25 rounds a second and pretty good trigger response. Another option, right, that you can go that is slowly becoming more popular, we've done a couple of videos on these, is the Warhead. If you guys haven't seen me talk about these yet, you can go back a couple videos. I think I did an overview of like the brushless motor versus a standard DC brush motor. The brushless motor is just going to be more efficient overall, faster. It's going to have all the torque and all the speed without all the limitations of like a traditional DC motor. The limitation with the DC motor is if I go higher speed, like if I go with a 40K motor, right? 40K motor, I'm not going to have as much like torque, meaning semi trigger response is going to kind of suffer. However, with the brushless like technology, that is not the case, right? I can go with the Warhead. These the ones we currently carry are a 20K RPM from Warhead. This is their standard offering. They offer a 35K and even higher, but you really don't need anything extreme because I own this motor personally. It is in my tournament gun. I've got it paired with some Rocket 12 to 1s. With the Warhead 20K, I'm getting upwards of 30 rounds a second on 12 to 1s. And that's not really short stroked at all, if much. I believe I have one tooth taken off just to prevent pre-engagement, right? And what pre-engagement essentially is the motor spinning too fast to where the gears will catch this piston part before it actually fires, which can cause damage to your internals. But these Warhead motors are honestly the best motor on the market right now. Thanks for fixing my handguard the other day. Yeah, dude, we got you. Anytime, man. These Warhead motors, honestly the best brushless motor money can buy. I know another good option is the T238 from AliExpress. Unfortunately, obviously, we're not AliExpress, so we don't carry those. But I've heard good things about those as well. But the brushless motor is kind of a end game upgrade, right? Like I said, this isn't going to be necessary for most of you guys that like play just casually, unless you're playing like every other weekend and you're really into it. You really don't need like a motor of this caliber. This full metal rack piston and a MOSFET will do you just fine for whatever AEG you have. High torque motor and full metal rack piston. Gearing and like higher end motors is definitely, like I said, for the more experienced or enthusiast type players. You don't need that much to get, I would say, the scope of performance out of that on your gun. You don't need that much to get that performance out of your gun. My gun is shooting very clunky. What should I do? Honestly, I recommend bringing that into us to take a look at. It sounds like it could be a strip piston or a problem with your motor height. So the next time you're here, give us a holler. But yeah, like I said, generally you don't need gears or a high-end motor, right, to really up your game, right? $20 part and a $80 part plus labor is going to do you just right. Compression and maybe a MOSFET is also optional at that point. The only time you would really be thinking about doing like bushings, bearings, or Warhead motor, right, endgame motor, so to speak, is generally what I see is people will buy a retro gearbox. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out and show you guys what this is. So this is the pretty much the best gearbox money can buy. This is going to be what your gears and everything like that sit inside of to power and operate your airsoft replica, right? Your MOSFET would sit right here. This is a version 2. You got the 3 holes for the bearings or bushings and where your cylinder goes. The neat things about like a nicer gearbox like this, it's going to run you about $100, about $108, and these are CNC aluminum. The cool thing about these is you never have to worry about this part right here where the cylinder sits, the cylinder and the cylinder head. With all the force of the piston slamming against that, on most OEM gearboxes that we see, they're going to crack right about here where my finger is on both sides of the gearbox. I've seen that a lot in gearboxes. Now, aftermarket gearboxes such as this one, CNC aluminum, the chance of that happening is a lot more tough. These are CNC milled from a solid block of aluminum, so they're definitely able to take a little more beatings. The nice thing about these is, like, say you have a old rifle or an old receiver sitting around, and version 2, version 3, it doesn't matter. Like I said, we sell both, and you want to make a build for it, you can totally buy one of these and build it from the ground up. So this is like I said, end game, like meta kind of upgrade. Most casual players are not going to be needing this, but maybe you guys just wanted to know about it, right? Maybe you didn't know you had that option, right? Most people don't know that airsoft guns really go this deep, right? It's always been kind of a niche hobby. We got a guest commenting here. I have a trigger and a Perun hybrid on the way. So you can do the prune and the trigger for about $40 labor at our tech department. If you wanted to put in a few more upgrades, I would take a look at full metal rack piston, which I just talked about on the stream. If you don't have one of these already, I do believe these are essential to longevity of your airsoft gun. Plastic teeth and gears pulling a spring off of those teeth, just really not a good combo. Honestly, the only thing we're really going to charge you more for is a shim job if you do decide to get like gears. Speaking of which, moving on from like the endgame retro gearbox and warhead and all that, right? Most people are going to do full metal rack, they're going to do a motor, they're going to do their compression, and then they're going to get to the point of like the MOSFET, like, and be like, okay, I want to do gears in my gun as well. And lately, I just wanted to point out something on the stream really quick, just so it's out there. So we carry a full inventory. I've got a guap ton of these SHS gears. Now these SHS gears, generally over the months and years of me playing airsoft, they've been around for a while and they've been the go-to, right? This is pretty much CNC steel. They do a pretty decent job of cutting them and how they are, but on these, in my opinion and experience, the bevel teeth sometimes are a little too sharp. Their quality control can be lackluster. I have had these SHS gears that come in these blue boxes. I don't know exactly what generation this is. These might be Gen 4, Gen 3. I'm not too sure, to be honest. It has been a minute. The gears from SHS, kind of quality control issues lately. I've been hearing ups and downs with them. So I would avoid these unless you generally know what you're doing. If you're a tech yourself, I would go for the rocket gears. Now I'm being informed, and I've always been informed and known that these are SHS, just rebranded. If you guys know what happened to like Dynamic and Cow and UAC back then, this is kind of the same thing. Rocket gears, in my opinion, I don't know if they go through any sort of different quality control, but they've always seemed to work a little better for me over the SHS branded gears. Another option is CNC production gears that you can go for, but those are carried by different distributors, so they might be a little more difficult to find. Should I put a DSG gear in it with prune trigger and piston? I would honestly avoid the DSG, man. The only reason you would build a DSG is one of three reasons. One, you want to show off rate of fire, right? Got a gun that shoots 40 rounds a second. You know, it's kind of cool, right? Gun go burr. Second reason you want to build a DSG is trigger response, but you can get that out of HPA or you can get that out of a single sector setup, no problem, and it's a lot more reliable. So that's the second reason I would avoid a DSG. The third, and in my opinion, only valid reason to build a DSG is to show off your tech skills, right? Show off like, hey, I can do it, right? We've done plenty of DSGs here, but reliability and DSG, right, it's going to cost you a lot of money to be able to get a DSG that's reliable. We're going to have to spend some serious, wrench time on that and do the proper things. Like, for a DSG, I wouldn't do a DSG without a retro gearbox. DSG, you're usually pulling like an M150 or higher spring. Like, CNC gearbox shell is kind of a no-brainer at that point with that strong of a powertrain. So I'd recommend, if you want to do anything more to your gun, man, pick up some gears. Maybe check out a motor, right? But a prune with the trigger and a full metal rack, like piston with a full metal teeth rack, or full metal tooth rack, that should set you up pretty good for gameplay at Tac City and longevity on your gun. It does look like we're approaching the time limit on my stream here, but just to kind of preface what we went over, if you guys are confused or if it's kind of a long stream, kind of jumbled up, general AEG parts that I would classify for casual players: a motor, full metal rack on the piston, right? Pick out a piston, that's not too expensive. this is a good generic upgrade to get you out the door. You don't need like a warhead motor. You don't need a retro gearbox shell like all these guys tell you. You don't need 12 to 1s, right? 18 to 1s will work just fine as long as you get them shimmed properly. The only thing on top of these two that I would say would qualify for a casual player is like Gate Titan, electronic control unit to manage what's going on inside that gun. The next level upgrades, like I said, would be gearing and compression, right? After you've done like a motor of your choice and a piston along with the MOSFET. Gearing and compression are usually the second stage upgrade. At that point, you'd be playing a lot more. You're a little more into it. That's the next step. And then we got like the end game upgrades, right? If you guys play video games like Tarkov, this is like Kappa end game upgrade. You don't really need these like off the bat like ever unless you're building a ground up gun custom. End game, when your gearbox shell finally gives out, you're gonna upgrade to this one, and maybe pick up a motor that's a little faster and more fancy if you feel up to it at that point. But generally, that is the overview of kind of how we do AEGs here. How that's my take on them. My techs, Garrett and Zach, may or may not have a different opinion or view on that. Obviously, with every tech, it's going to be different, with the similarities being the fundamentals of building the actual gearbox are the same, right? Proper shimming and proper AOE, right? Installing parts properly. As long as you do all that properly, you should be good to go. I know Garrett's going to have a more kind of experience and opinion that leans towards like the slower type gun, right? He likes doing bushings, and Garrett is also the type of guy that likes running like a 12 to 1 ratio with like an 18K motor from AEG, an even higher torque motor, right? That gun is very slow on auto, but his whole philosophy on that, which I kind of agree with, is efficiency. You're not drawing a lot of amps out of that on semi. It's a very efficient gun, and not a lot of people can outrun the trigger on something like that. But when it comes to me personally, I'm the guy that'll do the same thing, but go with the warhead. I like having the option of being able to put it in auto and play a full auto game, at 30 rounds a second and have a really high speed gun and still be efficient, at the cost of my wallet, because these motors are honestly ridiculous. I think if we wait a little, maybe the technology will become more accessible and the pricing will kind of become more fair. I think more people will be using the brushless motor over like a standard motor. But for the time being, it's kind of an end game upgrade with how much it costs. I'll come in soon for install plus shim, which would be 60. Yeah, we'd charge you 60. That's going to be the install of Perun. We're going to put your trigger in, and then we're going to give it a quick shim job with whatever gears you have in there. At which point we'll advise you on what to do, and you can decide on what to buy if you need to. But other than that, I'm going to wrap up the stream here. I hope you guys enjoyed this AEG overview. You're always welcome to comment on these videos after the fact. Our live stream, like, they save the replays, so you're more than welcome to go in there and nitpick my opinion. I'd love to talk about it, see what you guys are building. Maybe somebody knows something I don't. But I hope all your airsoft adventures are going well. Everyone's having a good time, no matter where you're playing at. Pack up some of these products here. But with that being said, you guys can email us in the description if you guys have any questions or concerns about service or parts, right? We'd be happy to help you out over email if you want to build like a parts list. And I do know we have a lot in stock. I know we have SHS gears in stock, ASG motors in stock, Lonex motors in stock. People are talking about struggling to find parts in SoCal. So if any of you guys are in here, come see your boy, because we got parts in stock for days, right? Come see Kevin, come see Garrett, come see one of us. We'll hook you up, dude. We'll take care of you. Because I know parts are getting scarce with inventory and shortages and whatnot. But we've stocked up, for you guys and our guests specifically. So come see us. You can also call us. If you go on our website at taxcityairsoft.com, there will be links to our social media. You can also call us during field hours and ask for the tech department if you guys have any issues you want to discuss over the phone. But other than that, I'm going to wrap it up here with our AEG overview. Wish you guys a good night. Like I said, hope everyone's having a great time as usual wherever you guys are playing, right? Hope to see you guys out here at the field. Maybe I get to build a gun for you, you know?